Hello, YouTubers. This is a new session where we get to talk a little bit about eventing in C Sharp. Eventing have been with C Sharp since almost its very beginning. It's very commonly used in UI kind of based things, especially like those who were working with Windows forms or those who work in gaming, developing games in C Sharp.net with Unity and others, but also those who are working with Blazor. If you're building a Blazor application, there's eventing going on there, especially when you're trying to kind of use a third-party component or a native component where you're trying to send an action or a delegate or an event handler in one way or another. So let's go ahead and take a quick look here about what we're trying to do, and I want to kind of give you a nice visual into what are we doing. Imagine that you have a button, right? You have a component, and this component has a button, right? And you want when that button gets clicked, something else happen. So you're firing an event. This is an event, right? And on click for that event, so that your event is on click like that, on click like this. This on click basically goes and does something that you've injected into that button. It's something that like the button is not programmed, or hard coded to do something specific on click. You have to kind of add that into that button component, right? Until when the button is clicked, pop a message or do something, whatever the case may be. So this goes into, on click goes and kind of fires an existing registered, kind of a subscriber action, right? So for instance, I'm a subscriber, meaning that I want to sign up to handle when a button is clicked. When you click on the button, something happens and you kind of pass that in. This happens almost every day, even at this very moment. Like when I click here, that's literally an event. And there's a listener on that event that kind of changes, what draw IO is doing. How do you implement that in C Sharp? Let me show you. So here's Visual Studio. Here's a project. I'm gonna go here in its simplest forms, really. I'm gonna go here and say, well, here's another a class. I'm gonna call it button, right? And then I'm gonna say here's a property, and this property is of type event. So say we're marking it as type event, it has a type event handler, and then on click. Okay, so on click, you're basically saying for this particular event handler, when the button is clicked, do something with it, right? Now, how do you actually trigger what happens when that, like, how do you kind of say, click the button, right? So there's on click, but then there's the triggering of that event. So I'm going to go here and say public void click, right? So the button is clicked, and then you go and say on click invoke, right? Invoke here wants a sender, which is, whatever event that's trying to kind of handle that, and whether you want to pass a event args in there. And I'm going to show you how to get rid of that extra fluff that comes with the event handler, which is like a native type that comes with the .NET platform. So that's a button, and you basically are saying when the button is clicked, register a method to that button, and when the button is clicked, go ahead and fire whatever that button, whatever you want that button to do. So obviously, I'm gonna go here and say on button clicked. So this is a method that I want to send onto that button component, and then I'm gonna go here and say when the button is clicked, console write line button is clicked. Okay, so this is a method, and this method will react to the event when a button is clicked. Great. Let's try it out. Let's go here. Let's go and say var button. So this is, I brought in a new button into my system, and then the button on click, I want to register an event. So when the button is clicked, go ahead and trigger this particular method. Okay, and then let's actually trigger the button. Let's actually say click and see what happens. So our expectation is when I register the button and the button is actually clicked, it should say button is clicked, right? Let's see if that's true. That's the theory. Let's see if that's true. So I'm gonna kind of navigate in the eventing demo.net run, and let's see if that guy works the way we expect. There you go. So it says button is clicked. Do you see that? Right? Button is clicked, meaning I created a button, this button right here, right? And then I registered this method, right here. So on click the subscriber action, right, which is that method, and then the external resource, whatever that may be, will basically go and say click. That's the click button, right? That's the call to trigger that event because something still has to say an event has happened, right? Something has happened. Go ahead and notify all the listeners, all the subscribers to that particular method or that particular event. This is basically the simplest possible form that you can think of when it comes to doing something like this. But how do you use that in the enterprise world, right? Like this is great, but we're not building buttons every day, right? And we're not building, something that's the UI components every day. Most of the time, enterprise engineers specifically, when they're really working with stuff like this, for the most part, you want to build services and methods, and you want these services and microservices to talk to each other. How does eventing come in handy in here? Let's say I want to, notify when a student is added to a schooling system. And I want the library service to go and create a library card for that student. I want the physical activity, kind of class or coach be notified that a new student have joined the class and they need to be registered. I want to tell a bunch of people that something has already happened. Something very commonly known as, publisher subscriber pattern. So let me go here, or pops up pattern. So this is the thing. Like this is your publisher publisher in here. Like an event has happened. I wrote publisher wrong if I know how to spell, right? And then there's a bunch of subscribers. And because anything can be broken into a tri-nature theory, there's of course an event sitting in the middle. So this the event here is on event, and these are all listening to that publishers. So this is this here, this is an event, right? And these guys are all listening to that particular event. Okay, so these are all, subscribers. Subscriber, right? So you're fanning out. What's beautiful about this is that it kind of gives you the power of abstraction, right? Like this guy in blue doesn't have to know anything about the guys in purple, right? Because they both have this nice abstraction layer between them, which is that one in red, which is the event, right? And when the publisher gets triggered to call an event or to publish an event, all these subscribers, they go and say, well, I'm interested into knowing what happened. And that's basically what we're going to implement here. And then I'm going to show you something really cool about C Sharp that is not actually very common. I just learned about that recently, reading the C Sharp 12 reference book. So, okay, let's do that example. So let's get rid of all that junk, right? Let's go up in here. Let's get rid of all that. And let's get rid of all that. Yeah, let's get rid of everything, right? And let's just go ahead and build a model. So I want a model here that's a student model. Just a simple model, doesn't have to be something huge. Student model, and I'm just gonna give this student a name so we know that we're getting the right information about that student. Okay? Now, people who are building standard compliance systems, they know that we need to build some brokers, right? Something that we can, interact with, but also be able to mock, so we can only test our business logic, not what the native C# libraries are doing or whatever external resource we use is. So I'm going to go here and say student event broker. Okay, so this is a student event broker, and this broker's main responsibility is to be able to, handle the subscription, handle the publication of an event, right? And all that kind of fun stuff. Let's go ahead in here and say private read only, like this, private event. And I'm gonna say on student added, like that. Okay, so this is private event. But in here, I want to add that model, that student model in here. So if you go and say event args or event handler like this, event handler, right? And then you go in here and say introduce the student like this, you've already introduced kind of a, an external or a native model into your system, right? That's not exactly what I want to do here. I want to make an awaitable kind of function that gets passed in, and this awaitable function is, I can await it. I can do a lot of stuff in it. I want that kind of freedom. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to go and say public, watch this, public delegate value task, something that takes a student and return a student, right? It doesn't even have to return a student, but I'm doing it for the purpose of the enterprise, system development need. And then on student added, and that guy accept a student as an input parameter. Look how beautiful that is. This is the delegate that we just created, custom delegate. And now I can go and take that exact signature like this and slap it right here. Oh, sorry, this guy on student added right here. Okay? So this way, you're basically using that custom delegate that we just created to define your local models, the models that you want to work with without having to deal with the event handlers and all that kind of stuff, right? Well, there's a couple of other things that I want to expose here. I want to go and say, I want to subscribe. So the subscriber needs to take that on student added kind of something that adheres to that contract that returns a student in a value task, but also takes a student as an input parameter. And all I have to do here is basically go and say this dot on student added, and then plus like this, and then I do the on student added, which is the event that I want to subscribe to. Okay, that's one. The second thing is I want to be able to actually publish an event, right? So it's a synchronous value task. Here's a student, something that will return a student, and then I'm going to say publish async, and then I'm going to take a student here, and then I'm going to await and trigger that guy. So on student added, invoke like this, and I'm going to do something that I don't like too much about this, but we'll get to that part. There's no invoke async. You'll see that in Blazor, but you won't see that in here. I don't know why, honestly. It would have been nice if it said invoke async, but it's not. There's no invoke async in here. So maybe that's the wrapper that the Blazor folks did to kind of cover that kind of inconsistency in terms of like, is it an awaitable one? It's not an awaitable. I don't know. It doesn't matter anyway. We can basically, that's the whole point. We have brokers is to kind of wrap these kind of inconsistencies and develop standard compliant systems, moving onwards from foundation services and upwards until the exposure layers. So that's a broker, and that broker has a delegate, and the delegate basically says you can subscribe, you can publish async, right? Let's start with a simple service. I'm going to go here and create a service, and let's call that student service, right? And this student service will have, let's say it has an event, public async value task. I'm trying to adhere to the same contract and say add student async like that, and that's your student, right? And that student basically, that method basically, all that it's doing really, okay, let's give it a, let's inject a nice dependency in here. So private read only and I students, well, I'm used to kind of um, define student event broker. I'm using to define with an interface because that's how you do test-driven development. But just for the purpose of this video, I'm going to show you, how you can do this real quick as a POC. Okay, so that's your constructor, great. And then in here, you basically say on add student, you're going to do something, but part of this add student is that I'm going to go here and say this dot student event broker publish async student. See what I just did there? So when a student is added, I'm going to publish an event, right? And whoever is interested into listening to that particular event will be notified because they'll be subscribing to that same event broker, right? So let's go do that. Let's create another one in here, another service. But this service is going to be called student library service, something like that. And this student library service will have also a private read-only student event broker, like that. I'm going to create generate a constructor for it. Right? It would have been nice if the constructor generation is smart enough to give you that kind of fat arrow, but here we go, right? And then I want to sign up and subscribe to the student events, right? So I'm going to go here and say public void subscribe to student add event, right? And that guy doesn't really do anything in itself. It calls another method in this service, and that method will be the one that's actually doing some work. So let me kind of define that method here real quick. Public async value task, right? Student, and then let's say create student library card async, something like that. So it takes a student like that, and then it's gonna go and create a student library card for it. I'll just do console write line. There you go. And then I'm gonna go here and say student here, student.name, library card was created, or something like that, right? And then I can return the student if I want to, just for the contract or whatever. Okay, so now I can actually subscribe and listen to that event, because I can go here and say this dot student event broker dot subscribe, right? And then there's that create student library card thing, right? So now that this student library service has its own method and it's subscribed through that event broker, which you can mock, you can test, you can do whatever you want with it. The last thing that's left for us to do here is to basically just go here and test it out. So I'm gonna go. Imagine this is your startup CS or program CS, in an ASP.NET kind of enterprise application, and you're initializing this. So this is student event broker. Here's your broker, and you also want to define student service. So here's a new student service. And this student service wants your broker. And you also have student library card service. So new student library card or library service, right? And let's start kind of doing things with it. So you're listening on an event. So you're registering that listening on the initiation of the app, and you're waiting for the event to happen, right? So let's do this. First of all, student library card service wants to subscribe to the ad, to the student ad. So this is it starting to listen on when a new student is added. The last thing we need to do here is to basically go to the student service and resemble that. So basically add student async, and I'm just gonna be really not very nice with the code here. I'm just gonna here student new student. Here you go. Right, and I'm gonna go and say name is Kailu. This guy is an awaitable. Sure, let's await this guy like that. Right, and maybe make this an async task method or something like that. There you go. Okay. So this is what happened. I created a broker. This is super standard compliant system, right? Because you're playing by the rules, right? You have brokers, you have services, and these services are talking to each other indirectly. They're not talking to each other directly. They're talking to each other indirectly through a common a common broker, something like the Levent library that we built a while back. The student service is initiated with the same broker that this guy is, and you're basically going and saying subscribe to that student event. So when something happens, please let me know. Let's run the app and see what happens. Here's a moment of truth. Let me clear out that junk. Let's run. There you go. Student name library card, because of course I forgot to put the dollar sign. So it would actually say Kailu in here. So let's just go do that. Clear. Let's try that again. There you go. Student Kailu library card was created. Right? Now, the question is, like, the code is so simple. Like, look at your event broker. It's super simple, right? And I'll tell you a little bit of complexity that you can add to it, something that's very rarely used in C#.NET, but, thanks to, the people that are designing these libraries and the people that are advocating for these technologies, you get to actually know about all the little things that you can do with them. But before doing that, I want to add another service in here. Um, PA student service, PA like physical activity, student service is it'll do exactly the same thing that the library card is doing. I'm not even I'm not even gonna bother writing it from scratch. I'm just gonna go and say this is PA student service. I'm gonna drop that in here and replace just the name like that, and then subscribe to student add event. Great, and then create student PA PA record async. Okay, nothing changed. I just created another subscriber. And I'm doing that for a reason. I'm going to show you in a second why that's important. Okay, here you go. Okay, and then student PA record was created. Great. Okay, we'll do the same thing. I'll go back to my program CS here. I'm going to add this new, this is PA student service like that. And I'm going to take that name. I'm going to paste it in here. I want to make the first, what is it? Control Shift Alt U, or is it Control Shift U? U. I never remember that one. So to make it uppercase, lowercase, where is it? What's the shortcut for this? Yeah, you're gonna wait with me until yeah, make lowercase, Control U. That's right. Control U, lowercase. Fantastic. And then I'm just gonna subscribe again. So this is this service subscribing again. And when I run this, watch this. When I run this, you're going to get two messages instead of one. It's basically telling you you can register as many as you want. You can register as many people as you want in here. It doesn't matter, which is amazing. You're fanning out, right? What's beautiful about this is that the student service doesn't know anything about student library service and the PA student service. But why did I do that? Why did I do that for you? Because in C Sharp, you can actually go into the student event broker and do something super wild. You can go here literally and say, hey, private event on student added and on student added as a property. Watch this. And you can do add remove. I've never seen this before, right? Until very recently, I've never seen anything like this before. Watch this. This guy here, what it's going to do, it's basically going to help you do things on add and on remove. Like when you subscribe, unsubscribe from a particular event, right? You can do things before and after based on that particular action. That's like eventing on the eventing itself, like the event of adding, right? Before the event of triggering the actual event. I feel like I keep saying event a lot, but that's really what it's doing. Let's see why this guy's complaining. The type student event already contains a definition on student added, which is this guy. That should kind of allow me to, if I am yeah, let me take that guy out. That's right. Private student out on student added. Let's just say the on student added event maybe. Okay. And now in the subscription area, you're replacing it with this guy. It's still the same thing because you're adding the event here to this guy. But look what happens now. I can now extend this. Watch. Here. I can extend this guy and I can actually do crazy things here. I can go here and say console, write line, listen in on who registered and who didn't. So you can literally go save method.name, tell me who actually registered, right? So I can go here and say, oh, I don't want to do it that way. It's 2025. Why would I do that kind of concatenation style? So let me do it this way. Registered, right? So I can listen in on events that are happening before the event triggers. And I can tell you this right now, enterprise engineers, you're building something important. You want to know who's signing up and who's not and all that fun stuff. So now watch what happens. If I go and run my app, watch this. It says create student library card async registered. Create student PA record registered. That's pretty cool, right? You actually get to see who's listening in, who's not listening in. Before I wrap this up, it's a very best practice to actually allow people to unsubscribe, subscribe from your service, right? And that's that second event. That's add, and that's the remove. It's very, very good practice to go and tell people after a certain event happens, I don't want nothing to do with this anymore. It gives you more control. It allows you, even when you're test driving software, it allows you to add and remove events. So you don't want to trigger particular things and whatnot. That's usable. That's something you can use in your enterprise application today. I hope you find this a little bit useful. Again, this is another oldie but goldie because the eventing in C Sharp have existed forever, right? But using it in a way that's test driven, like if you ask AI, because I did, if you ask AI and say, hey, what's the issue? Why people are not using eventing anymore? They'll say because testing it is hard. Well, testing it the native way is hard. Trying to kind of make up particular delegates in your test is hard, but if you wrap it behind or kind of put it behind a broker and mock that interface for that broker, the interface doesn't really care what the implementation is, and you can kind of see the behavior. That's a completely different story. I hope you find this useful. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to drop a comment in the comment section. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Take care.